Overpowered protagonists in a series have a certain lizard brain appeal to the general viewing public, myself included, and the reason why isn't as straightforward as most would expect. As well, from a narrative standpoint, it can seem lazy and repetitive. It offers a deep-seated fulfillment among viewers. And that's why this season had one of the most satisfying OP protagonists in anime hit the scene since One Punch Man. Well, season 1 at least. Let's be real. So let's look at why good boy Lloyd from Suppose a Kid from the Last Dungeon Boonies moved to a starter town fills that niche. But more importantly, why we keep coming back for more. The idea of an overpowered protagonist immediately jumps out as going against the grain in anime, especially for something in the shonen battle genre, where an emphasis on fights and power levels is not just an area of contention and serious debate, but one of the most beloved aspects of these franchises. People love these playground debates of who would win in a fight between so-and-so and whoever. It's so ingrained in the anime and manga reader zeitgeist that fights should be close. At least serious fights between the protagonists of the series and their antagonists. This rule is usually only broken to show one of two things: how far the protagonists have to go to beat the antagonists when they get their asses kicked, and how far the protagonists have come when they beat the antagonist easily. It's a common trope to bash an old enemy into the dirt who gave them a hard time once they've done some training, basically to show that they're at a new tier of strength. Just imagine how many games use early bosses as late game fodder to establish that same thing. But a young spunky hero like Deku seeing the power gap between himself struggling to control his power and All Might's greatest adversary All For One demonstrates the former, that we know he couldn't win, but we fully anticipate that he'll stand on that stage in the future. And because examples are plentiful, Fairy Tail was notorious for the latter, using previous arc major villains as fodder in the next, as a shorthand to say how strong the cast is now. But that sets up the logic of the world. We like when good guys beat bad guys in a fight. That seems pretty self-evident, that we as a social species like seeing people who break that social contract by doing evil crap get punished and beaten up by the arbiters of society. It's why the smackdowns in My Hero Academia feel so right, because it builds the stakes by giving credence to the threat, with the heroes maturing in their roles to combat that menace. Good guys in these sort of franchises fight bad guys because they're a real threat, not just to the world, but them personally. Which brings me to the new breed of protagonists coming out in recent years, ones that blur the line between parody and sincerity. Light novels have been a breeding ground for protagonists and heroes who are beyond the power scale of their respective worlds for years now, even outside of genres like isekai. With the misfit of Demon King Academy and Suppose a Kid from the Last Dungeon Boonies moved to a starter town in recent memory. Even One Punch Man in the webcomic, manga, and anime scene fill this trope. These type of narratives sort of betray the common sense of story progression set up by their genres. A fantasy series where the main protagonist fights demon lords to right wrongs? A series where an all-powerful godlike demon lord toys with life, death, creation, destruction, and even time? Or a hero who can punch so hard that he can beat a threat in a single hit? It begs the question, where does the story go from there, since these characters are so strong, they can't reasonably have a threat? In essence, conflict is one of the cornerstones of story writing, but that's the trap of these sort of series, as the fights these characters get into are not the conflict. Quoting Robert McKee from his book, Story, Substance, Structure, Style, and the Principles of Screenwriting, progressions build by moving dynamically between the positive and negative changes of value at stake in the story. Re-evaluating what a conflict is through this lens illuminates why these sort of stories resonate with audiences. In Last Dungeon Boonies, we see Lloyd dispatch monsters with ease, to the point he sees them as pests. That's not a change in the progression of the story, but an afterthought. What changes in the story is him applying to be a soldier, the goal and upstroke of his journey. That's the positive change in value. When he doesn't get it, he's depressed because his dream came crashing down before his eyes. A negative change. He bounces back by looking on the bright side to try and get a job so he can reapply next year. Positive. He then feels everyone is worrying about him, which reminds him of his self-perceived weakness. Negative. These are the actual beats that move the story forward, the ones that progress the plot, not the actual monster fights. So a key aspect of analysis is defining the conflict. and most people confuse what the conflict is. Are these characters fighting the conflict? Is the conflict when Anos curb stomps this guy? Is the conflict when Saitama beats a monster destroying the city with a single punch, making it look easy? Is Lloyd leisurely tossing a man-eating bug monster out of the city with some cartoon physics really conflict? No, because this confuses a conflict with the conflict. Again, back to McKee. Dilemma confronts the protagonist who, when face to face with the most powerful and focused forces of antagonism in his life, must make a decision to take one action or another in a last effort to achieve his object of desire. Antagonism is almost never a physical entity in fiction. It's what an antagonist represents for the protagonist. What they stand for or prevent the protagonist from accomplishing. Is that living a peaceful life after the bloodiest war in history? Rekindling your passion to pull yourself out of a depressive slump? Or saving as many people as possible? In the case of Last Dungeon Boonies, it isn't so much a person, but the idea of Lloyd himself. His own perceived weakness is the thing that prevents him from achieving his goals of being a soldier, so he can move on to being a hero. The humility and misunderstandings his lens imposes on his worldview distorts situations, leading to these conflicts he and his friends must face. Those are the moments the series chooses to focus on. Lloyd leaving a positive impact on others while unwittingly saving the day and building a close friend circle around him of people who genuinely admire him not for his strength, but for his personality. When looking at a franchise and evaluating a so-called perfect character or Mary Sue who's too powerful and can easily crush whatever threat that attacks them, instead of ending there, look at what the character struggles against. What obstacles actually impede their goals or progress the story. The reason these sort of characters resonate with us isn't just because they deliver some of the most hype, you fucked with the wrong guy moments in anime, but because they tell incredibly relatable stories on top of that. Lloyd's self-doubt, Saitama's depressive slump and lack of interest, and Anos' wish to move on from his past to a bright future are all things us as viewers want to see them through. It's why these stories are some of the most talked about and liked anime in recent history, and I don't think this trend will be going anywhere anytime soon, as it allows audiences to connect with characters over more than their immense strength like shonen protagonists of the past. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and do all the other YouTube stuff to help the channel grow. You can also join my Discord with a link down in the description, and if you really want to support me, you can head on over to my Patreon and pick up some extra perks, like voting on what I do next. Thanks for watching.